For more coverage of race, sign up here to have our race/related newsletter delivered weekly to your inbox. Shortly after the dawn of the 20th century, the scholar W.E.B. Du Bois took on a fellow black civic leader, Booker T. Washington, for what he described as submitting to white domination and accepting the alleged inferiority of the Negro races. Decades later, Malcolm X criticized Drive. Martin Luther King Jr. for being used by white people to teach Negroes to be defenseless. Those clashes took place without the gasoline that is Twitter. No at Malcolm X, no at MLK Jr., no number white shill. But just this week, the Harvard professor Cornel West said that the writer Ta-Nehisi Coates fetishizes white supremacy and that Mr. Coates takes a neoliberal position that sounds militant about white supremacy but renders black fightback invisible. And Twitter had its say. The drama unfolded online in a tabloid-like frenzy as Drive. West offered pointed criticism of Mr. Coates, and Mr. Coates soon decided to deactivate his Twitter account. It brought what historians consider a familiar occurrence in the black freedom struggle onto mobile phones everywhere. There have always been these debates between black male intellectuals about how much we should believe in the American project, about what is the path to freedom, and about the tenor of one's agitation, said Brittany Cooper, an associate professor of women's and gender studies and Africana studies at Rutgers University. How raucous, how disruptive should you be? The difference is wide in some cases. Malcolm X was more open to using violence as a form of self-defense than Drive. King, even though their beliefs were more nuanced and overlapping than the popular perception. Whereas Du Bois pushed for an expansion of civil rights, Washington was more compromising, urging black people to look within, get an industrial education, build wealth in order to minimize the terror they faced. With Drive West and Mr. Coates, there does not seem to be much distance between their underlying views on racism and white supremacy, even as their arguments have different emphases. This current dispute stems from Drive West asserting in a column in The Guardian that Mr. Coates's analysis of racism and white supremacy fails to account for broader factors like class and patriarchy, and that he is not critical enough of former President Barack Obama. Mr. Coates rebutted in a string of Twitter posts with excerpts from his work that included criticisms of Mr. Obama, and analyses of gender, poverty, war, and other areas that Drive West said he had failed to address. "I can't write on everything," Mr. Coates wrote on Twitter. "I try my damnedest to be as grounded as I possibly can. And when I throw a punch, I try to have my feet set, and to swing with intention." In one of his most notable pieces, Mr. Coates, 42, laid out the case for reparations, and much of his writing explores the systemic structures that are detrimental to black Americans and that keep white people in power. Drive West, 64, who came of age during the civil rights era and is equally dubious of the United States government, often highlights what he feels are the evils of capitalism and war, and regularly engages in direct action. He is from the tradition of liberation theology, contrary to Mr.